Today I want to talk to you about something that hurts me, but that is necessary to say. For many years I watched how people close to me, some friends, some family, began to change. Small things at first. A fall without any apparent reason. A forgetfulness that seemed like a simple lapse. Sleeping more than usual. Walking with less strength. At the beginning, no one gave it importance. It's age, they said. Normal things. But they were not normal. They were signs. And the worst part is that many times we ignore them. One of those people was my brother-in-law, a strong man, independent with character, always active. But over the years, he started having subtle changes. He began to drag his feet. He stopped going for walks. He slept in the afternoons, something he never did before. He forgot some words. We attributed it to tiredness, routine, age. But time showed that those small signs were the first warnings of something bigger. When we wanted to react, it was already too late to reverse it. That's why today I make this video. Because many times, what seems insignificant, a leg discomfort, a mood change, a fall without reason, is actually a silent warning. A way the body has to tell us something is wrong. And if we know how to listen in time, we can do something. We can prevent, treat, and improve. In this video, I want to show you 10 signs that could be indicating that an older person is in their last year of life. Not to scare you, but so you keep your eyes open. And if you are already noticing some of these signs, I also want to tell you what you can do to take care of your health and improve your quality of life. Before we start, I want to ask you a question. How old are you, and from which country are you watching me? Leave it in the comments. I would love to know who I'm talking to and from where you are seeing this message. Because if I've learned anything, it's that paying attention can make the difference between living in fear and living consciously. Gag. Sign 1. Subtle changes in recent memory. There are things one forgets over the years, and it's okay. The name of an actor, the address of an old friend, where you left your glasses. Small, fleeting, almost funny forgetfulness. But there is another kind of forgetfulness that is not funny at all. It's more subtle, more frequent, and could be the first sign of something more serious. Loss of recent memory. It all started with things that seemed normal. One afternoon, for example, I went to put water on the stove to make tea. I left the kettle on the fire, and while I waited, I sat down to read the newspaper. When I remembered, the smell of burning had already filled the kitchen. The kettle was blackened. It could have been worse. I could have left the stove on before leaving, but it wasn't the only time. At first, I attributed it to tiredness, then to age. I thought, it's normal. It happens to all of us. But then I began to forget entire conversations I had that very day. My daughter would say, "Dad, I already told you a few hours ago," and I didn't remember a word. It's not like forgetting a movie from 20 years ago. It's not remembering what happened that very morning. And that's no longer a simple lapse. This kind of recent forgetfulness is one of the first signs many overlook. It starts with something as silly as forgetting where you left the TV remote. Then the important stuff comes. Medical appointments, family visits, whether you took your pill or not. The problem isn't the forgetfulness itself, but what it reveals. That the brain is beginning to fail in its most active part, the one that manages daily life. It doesn't mean there is an immediate diagnosis of something serious, but it is a soft alarm, a bell ringing to warn you that it's time to pay attention to your mind, with the same care you give to your bones or your heart. What can be done? The first thing is to break the mental routine. The brain needs challenges, crossword puzzles, daily reading, memory games, learning something new, even if it's a recipe. It's also important to sleep well because lack of sleep directly affects memory. And of course, eating properly. There are foods that help brain circulation like oily fish, walnuts, or olive oil. But there is one thing even more important. Talk about it. Don't keep these forgetfulness episodes in silence. Tell your doctor, your children, your friends. The earlier it is detected, the more tools there are to strengthen memory. Don't wait for others to notice, because the truth is that, in many cases, the first to realize it is yourself. And if you're listening to this and have had some of these forgetfulness moments, don't be scared. You're in time. The important thing is to act, not to give up. Because aging does not mean getting lost in the fog. It means living with clarity, with awareness, and with dignity. And that can be trained too. Jig. Sign 2. Difficulty planning or solving problems. Another early sign of cognitive decline that we often ignore is this: increasing difficulty planning or solving everyday problems. It can start with something as simple as getting confused following a recipe you always memorized. Suddenly, you doubt if you already added salt, or you mix the ingredients in a nonsensical order. Or maybe you find it hard to organize the monthly bills. You paid the same bill twice and forgot another one. You used to have a clear system. You marked dates, did mental math, everything was under control. But now, you struggle to follow the sequence, get confused with amounts, and feel overwhelmed by tasks you once did almost without thinking. We're not talking about a simple lapse. Everyone can forget a date or make a mistake with change. But when these errors become frequent, and especially when they cause anxiety or confusion, it's time to pay attention. I remember Manuel, a lifelong neighbor. He was a retired accountant, a meticulous, orderly man who never fell behind on payments. Every month he sat at the same table with his notebook, calculator, and envelopes. One day he called me worried. He had paid the electricity bill twice, forgot the water bill, and couldn't find the receipts. He confessed he didn't understand how it happened. He felt his mind was shutting down at times. What happened to Manuel is more common than we think. And when you realize you are no longer handling things like before, it's not just frustrating, it's frightening. Because deep down, what we fear is not failing to pay. It's losing control over our lives. Planning and problem solving are key brain functions. When they weaken, our confidence suffers too. But here is good news. This function can be exercised and strengthened, just like a muscle. What can you do? First, keep your mind active with real challenges. Don't avoid bills or let others do them for you. Use paper, pencil, your head. Second, establish clear routines with visible lists. The more order outside, the more clarity inside. And third, practice games or mental exercises that require thinking in steps, puzzles, crosswords, or even simple strategy games. The key is not to give up on mistakes. Everyone can fail, but if you start noticing it's harder and harder to organize your day or solve what was once easy, listen to yourself. That may be your mind asking for help. And asking for help, believe me, is not a weakness. It's the first sign of intelligence. Track. Sign 3. Problems with familiar tasks. There are things we do so many times in life that they become automatic. Cooking the usual dish, turning on the oven, putting on the washing machine, making coffee without thinking. But when the mind starts to fail, these tasks, the most everyday, the most ours, turn into a minefield. I clearly remember Marta's case, a lovely woman of 79 years who had been sewing since she was 15. She made tablecloths, fixed clothes, even knitted coats for her grandchildren. It was something that gave her peace, kept her active, happy. But one day, without warning, she simply couldn't thread the needle. She tried several times, but it wasn't just a vision problem. She didn't know why the needle was there, what she wanted to do, or how to start. I sat with the needle in my hand for 20 minutes, she told me, and I realized I no longer knew how to sew. It wasn't just frustration, it was deep sadness, as if a part of her had silently faded away. That is one of the hardest and least talked about signs of cognitive decline. When someone begins to get lost in tasks they once did with their eyes closed. It's not just forgetting a recipe. It's not knowing where to start, how to use a blender, or mixing up microwave buttons. It also happens when cooking, turning on the stove and forgetting it's on, adding salt twice to the same stew, leaving food in the oven until it burns. Things that may seem like simple mistakes, but that repeat frequently and have increasingly serious consequences. Or driving. People who always knew their neighborhood, their city, and one day don't remember how to get home. Or take a turn wrong because they forgot what each pedal does. It's not distraction. It's not tiredness. It's disorientation. Here it's important to distinguish between common forgetfulness and something more serious. Everyone can forget where they left their keys or mix up a date sometimes. But when someone begins to not know how to do what they always knew how to do, it's time to pay attention. What can be done? Not all is lost. Sometimes, the right tools help maintain autonomy longer. Written routines, clear step-by-step cooking lists, labels with pictures or colors on appliances. Even something as simple as leaving notes in strategic places can make a big difference. It's also helpful to repeat tasks with someone nearby. Give confidence. Don't judge when someone makes a mistake, but accompany with patience. Because yes, these signs can hurt, but detecting them early can keep a person active, connected, and safe for many more years. Talk. Sign 4. Disorientation in time or place. One of the most subtle but also most alarming signs is when a person begins to lose track of time or place. At first it seems harmless, forgetting what day it is, confusing a Tuesday with a Thursday, saying it's summer when outside the autumn leaves are falling. We all get distracted sometimes, but when this becomes frequent, it's time to pay attention. At 78, I met Ernesto, a kind, calm man who had lived alone for some years. He always said his mind was his greatest pride. But one day, he went out as usual to the corner market, with his cloth bag in hand and a list written on paper. It didn't take more than 20 minutes to go and come back. That morning, however, 2 hours passed, then 3. No one knew where he was. They found him walking a few streets down, disoriented, with the list in his hand and no purchases. He didn't remember which street to take to return, nor did he remember why he went out. When asked what day it was, he hesitated. He said a different month. He thought it was morning, but it was already late afternoon. That marked him, and his family too, because what seemed like a small confusion was actually a clear sign. His mind was starting to have difficulty locating itself in time and space. It was not a simple lapse. It was an early symptom of cognitive decline. Why does this happen? Our brain, as it ages, can lose efficiency in certain areas. One of them is the hippocampus, a key region for forming memories and orienting ourselves in the environment. When the hippocampus is affected, it becomes harder to establish clear references: where you are, what you're doing, what day it is. The routine breaks, and with it, security. It's important to know that this kind of disorientation doesn't always mean a serious illness like Alzheimer's. But it is a warning. It's a sign that the mind needs support, structure, and attention. What can be done? A useful strategy is to reinforce temporal and spatial anchors. Have a large, clear clock at home. Use visible calendars with the day and date well marked. Establish daily routines that include temporal orientation. For example, say out loud every morning the day, date, and what will be done. Simple mental maps also help. Leave visible notes with key directions, or repeat daily routes until automated. Another powerful tool is patience. Don't ridicule, don't correct harshly. Help, accompany, and reinforce without making them feel they have failed. Because the fear of forgetting only speeds up forgetting. Disorientation is not always the beginning of the end. Sometimes, it is just a yellow light inviting us to take better care, observe more closely, and be present. And that, at any age, can make all the difference. Sign 5. Problems with language. One of the most unsettling signs of early cognitive decline is not forgetting names or dates, but the silent struggle with everyday words. At first, it seems harmless. You say, "Pass me that," instead of "Pass me the salt shaker," or you point to a chair without naming it, as if the name had vanished for a moment. I remember Clara, a brilliant woman of 75 who had always been quick with words. She loved crosswords, board games, long talks about books she had read twice. One day, while we were talking in a park, she suddenly stopped mid-sentence. "Can you bring me?" She pointed to a bench. "That? What is there to sit on?" It was a brief moment, barely noticeable, but I noticed. Clara had never had problems with her vocabulary, yet there she was, struggling to remember a simple word like bench. Over time, that started appearing more often. For the cup, the door, the coat. The worrying thing was not only that she didn't remember the word, but that she knew she had forgotten it. It showed in her expression. Frustration, embarrassment, a slight fear. As if her mind was playing a bad trick on her. This kind of difficulty naming objects, following long conversations, or understanding complex sentences should not be taken lightly. We all can have pauses, especially when tired or stressed. But when those pauses become frequent, and you start constantly depending on words like that or this, it's time to pay attention. A simple distraction or a sleepless night can make you momentarily lose a word. But if it happens several times a day, if you feel frustrated talking, or if others start finishing your sentences because you can't, that could be an early sign of something deeper. The good news is, the brain, like any muscle, can be exercised. Reading out loud, doing word association exercises, or even singing familiar songs are effective ways to activate language areas. There are also speech therapy sessions that help maintain and recover verbal agility. It's not just about remembering words, but about keeping the connection between what we think and what we say active. If you or someone you know has started having these small language slips, don't take it as an inevitable part of aging. It may be a sign, yes, but it can also be an opportunity to intervene in time. Words are bridges, and when those bridges start to fail, they must be repaired before they collapse completely. Tag. Signs. 6 and 7. Losing objects and impaired judgment. Sometimes, the most alarming signs are not the noisy ones, but those that go unnoticed, until they become impossible to ignore. The 6th sign of cognitive decline is more common than it seems, but also one of the most baffling. Starting to put important objects in absurd places, out of context, almost impossible to associate logically. I lived it with my Aunt Clara. One day she was desperately looking for her house keys. She searched pockets, bags, drawers, until after almost 2 hours, she found them. Inside the freezer, wrapped in a bag of frozen vegetables. No one understood how they got there. At first we laughed. It was easy to say she had her head somewhere else. But then it happened with the remote control, her purse, and even her mobile phone, which appeared inside the laundry basket. These situations not only cause frustration and waste time, they also provoke anxiety and disorientation, both in the person and their environment. Because when objects disappear, what also starts to vanish is self-confidence. The 7th sign, even more subtle but dangerous, is impaired judgment. It's not about big mistakes visible from outside, but small decisions that were obvious before and now feel confusing. Choosing inappropriate clothes for the weather, spending money impulsively, or trusting strangers who could take advantage. A neighbor my age, whom I always saw as a cautious and serious man, fell for a phone scam. They asked for his bank account number to return a supposed tax refund. He gave it without thinking. It wasn't because he was naive, but because something in his way of reasoning, evaluating risks, no longer worked as before. In both cases, the loss of objects and impaired judgment, there is something in common. The mind begins to fail in the most every day, and that can make life unpredictable. For those caring for an older person, these signs must be observed without judgment, but with great attention. It's not the same to forget an object once in a while as to do it repeatedly in illogical places. It's not the same to make a bad decision as to start making many in a short time and with serious consequences. What can be done? First, establish visual routines. Place simple signs indicating where keys, phone, and wallet go. Use bright colors for key objects, like a red tray where important items are always left. Second, accompany respectfully and non-invasively. It's not necessary to control every step, but be close to support without making the person feel incapable. Ask instead of ordering, "Do you want us to always put it here? Can I help you organize it so it doesn't get lost?" And finally, accept that these signs are not weakness, but a call for attention, a silent request for help before decline advances further. Detecting them early can make the difference between a life with support and a life at risk. That's why it's so important to observe, understand, and act with love, not impatience. Signs 8 and 9. Social isolation and mood changes. One of the most silent but deepest signs is isolation. It doesn't happen overnight. At first, there are small excuses. Today, I don't feel well. Another day, I'm tired. But over time, that other day never comes. Sign 8. Stopping going out, avoiding family, preferring to be alone. Those who begin to develop dementia often feel ashamed of forgetting things. They feel clumsy, confused, and prefer to withdraw rather than face the worried or impatient looks of others. They avoid family gatherings, calls, simple outings like going to the market or church. I remember Teresa's case, a 76-year-old woman who never missed Sunday lunches before. She cooked, laughed, listened to everyone's stories, but little by little, she started cancelling. One day she simply said, "I prefer to stay home. I feel better here." Her family thought it was a phase. It wasn't. It was the beginning of her shutting out from the world. Sign 9. Sudden emotional changes. Another change often misunderstood is mood swings. The person who was once cheerful starts showing irritability for no clear reason. They get angry over small things, or cry without apparent cause, or spend hours in silence, as if something inside had gone dark. Sadness and anxiety become part of their day, and often they can't even explain why. It's not just being in a bad mood, it's a mix of confusion, fear, and frustration that builds up inside. The affected person feels something is changing in their head, but doesn't know what to do with it. And those around them, if they don't understand what's happening, can withdraw just when they are most needed. Dementia doesn't always present with visible forgetfulness at the start. Sometimes the first thing that changes is how that person relates to the world. They shut down, they become silent, they get irritable or completely absent. What can children, grandchildren, and friends do? The most important thing is not to disappear too. Even if it seems that person rejects contact, even if they say they prefer to be alone, it is crucial to keep being present. Go see them. Talk to them patiently. Remind them who they are, what they like, what you live together. Even if they don't respond the same, that bond still exists, even if in another form. There are also simple habits that help slow down emotional decline. Going for a walk, even if just a block. Listening to music that marked their life. Playing simple memory games. Looking at family photo albums. Creating routines where they feel useful, even if just making tea or watering a plant. Because when the world begins to fade from the inside, love, patience, and daily connection can be the most powerful anchor there is. Sign 10. Changes in the way of walking or moving. Sometimes the most worrying signs from the body don't appear with pain, but with small changes that at first seem harmless. One of those changes, perhaps the most underestimated, is the way you walk. I don't mean an occasional trip or a bad step from wearing sandals. I mean when you notice your movements are no longer as fluid as before. When you walk slower without realizing it, or start dragging your feet. When it takes you longer to turn to look at something behind you, or you feel your balance is not the same. I know a man named Ramiro. He is 76 years old, and for a long time was very active. He walked every day, never had serious health problems. But one day he told me, "Lately I realize I trip over rugs. Like I don't lift my feet well." He said it with a smile, as if downplaying it. He attributed it to the passage of years. But weeks later, he had a serious fall going down a step. What few know is that the way we walk is directly related to our neurological and cognitive state. The brain coordinates movements, balance, and rhythm. When there are failures in those areas, often the first sign is a subtle change in walking. It is a silent signal that something may be affecting the communication between body and mind. A shorter step, a slight wobble, a delay lifting a foot. None of that is just because of age. It is valuable information the body is giving us, and we must pay attention to it. Now, the good news is that not all is lost by any means. The body has an incredible ability to adapt and improve when stimulated correctly. Gentle but consistent physical activities like walking on firm ground, practicing balance exercises, going up and down stairs with support, or even Tai Chi can have a huge impact. There are also specialized therapies in gait and coordination. Physical therapy focused on older adults not only improves mobility, but also works on the connection between muscles and brain. Even simple exercises like standing on one foot for a few seconds daily or walking in a straight line looking forward help keep coordination active. The key is not to ignore these signs. If you or someone close to you has started walking slower with short, clumsy, or dragging steps, don't normalize it. Don't say it's part of aging, because it doesn't have to be that way. Sometimes, with small changes in daily routine, a fall can be avoided, balance improved, and above all, independence preserved for many more years. Remember this: losing mobility is one of the things that limits a person most in old age. But acting in time can make all the difference. If you've made it this far, it's because something I told you resonated with you. Maybe you noticed one sign, maybe two, or maybe you lived each one as if I were telling it with your own words. And I want you to know something important. Noticing these changes is not the end. It is not a sentence. It is not a defeat. It is a warning. And like every warning, it brings with it an opportunity. It is the beginning of something you can manage if you act in time. The most important thing now is not to stay silent, not to lock yourself in, not to think you're exaggerating or that it will pass. Talk with your family, your doctor, someone you trust. Sometimes it's enough for one person to listen to you for things to start moving. If you have persistent pain, stiffness, mood changes, trouble sleeping, loss of strength or mobility, don't ignore it. It's your body talking to you. And your body, even as it ages, hasn't stopped asking for help. Listen to it. Get medical checkups. Be consistent, even if results take time. Sometimes just adjusting a routine, changing a habit, starting to move a bit more or eat a bit better makes a huge difference. Move, even if slowly. Walk, stretch, breathe deeply, stay active. And not just the body, the mind also needs exercise. Read, write, talk, play, remember, learn new things. As long as you are awake inside, no age can fully turn you off. Don't isolate yourself. The worst thing that can happen to us at this stage is to feel like we have nothing left to give, that we are just here to endure time passing. But that is a lie. You can still enjoy, laugh, teach, love. Your story doesn't end with a diagnosis. It can be the beginning of a different life, yes? But still full. Still yours. If this video helped you, if it made you think, if you saw yourself in it, I invite you to share it. Maybe someone else is going through the same thing, in silence, not knowing there are possible paths, and you can be the one to show them. Leave me a comment telling me which part touched you most. What did you feel? What are you living? Because even if we are far apart, even if we don't see each other's faces, here is a space where your voice also matters. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And above all, thank you for not giving up.